All right, welcome back, everybody. So this is awesome. Today I have my good friend Harvy Zook from Timberlane Finishing Solutions on, and we're going to talk about his company, Apollo Sprayers, Surfprep, and Renner Coatings, and then he also has a door program that people that refinish cabinets, they'll make doors and ship them out to you, and I believe you guys finish them as well, right?
Correct.
All right, cool. Well, so just tell us a little bit your background and about yourself, and just so people kind of get an idea of what you've done and where you're at now.
Absolutely. A little bit about my background is I had my own company, was doing custom finishing as well as woodworking, but just a lot of experience in the wood finishing industry. And obviously, back at that point in time, it was pretty much all conversion varnish, precats, lacquers, that kind of thing, which now we're seeing a lot of, waterborne products coming into the marketplace, which I'm super, super pumped and excited about. So Timberlane actually started about a year and a half ago. The company started, but it was because of a couple products that we were looking for that we couldn't find in the area. And in order to get them, we decided to just become a distributor for them. So that's how that all came about there.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. So just a couple of things that you guys do. You guys sell Apollo equipment, Surfprep, and then the Renner products. Let's talk a little bit about Surfprep because that's kind of how we ended up meeting each other was at AWFS at the Surfprep booth. It was like crazy. We were all hanging out and having a good time. So how'd you get into Surfprep?
Well, actually, probably I'm going to say about 10 years ago when I had my own company, I got to meet Skylar at, I believe he actually had stopped in at my shop. And that's how I got to meet Skylar, got to know him. And then I had seen him a couple times at IWS or IWF or whatever the show is in Atlanta. I can't remember the exact position.
IWF, yeah, that's it.
And we just became good friends. And then when I came on board with Timberlane, at that time, we only had wood coatings. And we didn't have Surfprep. And it's something that Wilmer asked me about. He's like, I would love to bring on Surfprep, but I don't know how to connect with them. Don't know anybody at Surfprep. And I'm like, well, I know Skylar real well, the owner of the company. I know the family real well. I said, let's give him a call and see what we can do. So that's how it all started. Actually about a year and a couple months ago. And it has been just a blast.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about Surfprep because I have people ask me all the time, is it worth the money? How does it help you? What's your opinion on that versus, some of the other sanding systems? I mean, for me, I've said it in videos already. It's a no-brainer, and I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to go check out some of those videos. But what's your take on the Surfprep?
Well, obviously, I've used it for, like I said, probably 10 years now because I used it before I sold it. I never thought in a million years I'd be selling Surfprep when I was using it back at that time. But it has been, for me, it has been a game changer, especially in the finishing industry, as well as obviously in the raw wood sanding, the white wood sanding as well. But the finishing sanding between coats, prepping, that kind of thing, I see a huge benefit with the Surfprep. But I think for what really makes them stand out for me is the fact that they are a smaller company. They're very family oriented. And if you need something, if you have a question about something, they're always there to help you through the process to answer the questions that you have, which is huge for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I ran into that same thing. I've not been using it quite that long. I'm like six years somewhere in there where I started using their products. And I won't forget this, but small shop, me, one man shop. I had a couple other guys working for me at the time. And we were having an issue because obviously I kind of jumped the gun on water base years ago, and I've been in water base for a while. And I was having issues with the Kim Aqua and standing in between it. And he got on a live feed with me, and we went through the whole thing on camera. It was pretty cool. But that's a good segue because one of the things I wanted to bring up is So what are you running into like with the water base sanding in between coats? Like what's your go-to setup? You're using the fine, the very fine? Are you using just regular film abrasive or the paper-backed abrasive? What's kind of your thoughts on that?
Honestly, my go-to is the very fine pad. That for me has worked the best, and either the 10 millimeter or the 5 millimeter for most of the flat surface, and then obviously the 1/2 inch pad as well for detail work. So the very fine, from my experience, has worked the best. I'm not saying that the super fine, super fine and the fine will probably work as well, and it depends on whose coating you're using as well.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I actually have found with some coatings, actually using the film back 220 is good for your primer sanding. It just depends on how well those coatings sand. So I've been using the film backed, and you can use the paper back 220 or 320 as well. And then I'm usually using like a fine on my my primer coats, and then I go to very fine on my finish coats.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that usually works pretty good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So you're just pretty much going very fine, like all the way through from sealer to top coat.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Pretty much. Cool. And even like the hand pads that I use, like my favorite go-to hand pad is the 1/2 inch double-sided AO pad.
Yeah, those are awesome.
Those are that was the pad that I started using, I want to say like 10 years ago. We went through cases of those, and it's still my favorite go-to pad. I know they have a ton of, like, they have the rad pads, they have all the other pads, which are great products, but my go-to is still the 1/2 inch double-sided.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't really know about those and really use those. Like from what I see out, on social media, everybody's doing. So that's a good thing to check out. But those are awesome, especially for profiles and things. I don't know, just the way the foam works and it contours. I like it better than using like a 1/2 inch, folded over pad. And it's kind of the same thing, but I guess you got a bigger surface. But yeah, I'm with you on that.
And it's just the fact that they're super, super flexible and they don't tear real easy. I mean, I'm sure if you use them, you realize that the backer is very rubbery. It takes a real sharp corner to rip it. So they last a really, really long time. If you just, knock them out a little bit, blow them off or whatever, they work almost forever.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Shane Woods was saying one time he used one for like 2 jobs or something. He was still going. So that was kind of funny.
Do. I mean, it's, they don't last forever, but they do last a really, really long time. And for the price, I mean, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
Now, how do you guys sell those? I know if you buy them direct from Surfprep, you have to buy a pretty good size quantity. Do you guys sell them in smaller quantities or?
Yes. So we have the case quantities as well, which I believe they're like 69 cents a piece if you buy in the case. But each, we have them, I think they're on the website for 85 cents a piece if you buy them by the each. So you can buy 5, 10, whatever you want to buy instead of the 250.
Gotcha. Yeah. So a case is 250?
250 sponges in a case, yes.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Just so that everybody knows that. All right. So cool. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the Renner coatings and then the Apollo turbine kind of combined. I know that you guys sell Apollo sprayers, and I've got one here, the 7700, beautiful gun, the best HVLP turbine gun on the market in my opinion. And if you don't believe me, you can go watch my videos. I'll leave them in the link below, and you can decide for yourself. So, but no, these things are awesome. You've got the tip choices and the air cap choices. There's just no other HVLP gun on the market that has this many choices. Even some of the high-end sodas and stuff, like, you don't have this many air cap choices and needle nozzles. You have to buy a different gun a lot of times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would have to second what you just said there. The Apollo 7700 definitely is by far the best that I have seen on the market. Obviously, I haven't seen all of them, but the 7700 definitely is by far the best that I've used personally.
Yeah. I think definitely in the turbine, there's just no comparison. It atomizes finer. it's got the least amount of overspray. I mean, it's crazy. Sometimes I'm using this thing and depending on the coating, I'm like, is it even working? I don't even see anything like coming out. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yep.
So what are you finding with the Apollo, like with the Renner coatings? Let's just take the 1094. What would be a good place for people to start in terms of needle nozzle combinations with that particular gun or any other HVLP gun? Now, we do have to consider that this one's going to atomize a little bit better, so there may be some slight differences. But if we can just get sort of a baseline for people on some of these coatings, I think that would help them out. So what are you seeing on your end with your customers, kind of go-to needle nozzle combinations?
With the 1094, I would say probably the go-to that I see the most is the 1.3 needle nozzle set. There's some people who use the 1.5, but the 1.3 seems to be the go-to for, honestly, almost all of the Renner coatings. It's crazy. I mean, I know people using 1.5, 1.8, 2.0, and I've tried the different ones, and maybe I'm just doing something wrong. But my background has always been air-assisted airless, and the 1.3, I don't know. It seems to break it down finer. Whereas I tried the 1.8, 2.0, and they just seem to give you more of that raindrop effect. Not that really nice soft spray. So I always went back to the 1.3. That's been my experience, and I know a lot of people using the 1.3 as well.
Okay. Yeah. I bounced around, and it was funny. We had a conversation about that. I was, on the 2K stuff, I usually go a little bit bigger, and I think a lot of it has to do with like your speed and how you want to go too. There's kind of part of that. Like I feel like with the 1.3, I'm like, I'm going really slow. So I'm like, I gotta, jack this up a little bit. And part of that is just, most of the coatings that I've, shot until last year have been lower viscosity American coatings. And I mean, pretty much 1.3 is the standard. If I want to put more on, I'll go up to a 1.5. Now, I have talked to John from Apollo, and he said one of the things that you can do is, and I got two of the caps here. This one is the C cap, and then this one is the high solids cap. Now, I've kind of messed with these a little bit, and I didn't see a massive difference, but I am going to do some more testing and kind of fool with those. But if you want to, you could try a combination of the air horn will fit around a 1.5, and you can actually use the blue caps over a 1.5. He said a lot of the car guys do that. I don't know if you've tried that or not, but that is something for people to try if they feel like it's moving too slow or they're not getting enough breakup that they want to see. Now, is anyone thinning the 1094, or pretty much everybody just shooting it straight with the HVLP setup?
Pretty much the 1094 is just mix it, spray it, or stir it and spray it, I should say.
Cool. Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about a couple of the other ones. So what would be the difference between the 1094 and then we bump it up to the 1245?
So the 1245, that's if I go with a mono component or a single component product, that is my favorite product. Using the 115002 primer underneath and then the 1245. And the reason for that is the fact that the 1245 has more of that slick furniture feel to it. The 1094 being it's a self-sealer, I mean, it's a great product. It looks great, feels great, but it doesn't have that real nice, slick, slippery feeling.
Yeah, that warm butter, as I like to call it.
Yeah, that warm butter feel.
You're looking for that nitro lacquer feel on these things. Yep. Yeah, I totally get it. Well, that's my favorite actually too, is the 1245, and then you guys sent me some of the 1062, I believe it is, and I'm actually working on that job now. I'm not spraying it yet, but I'm in the process of building the cabinets, and I was cutting the sides to the base cabinets when you called earlier. So yeah. But yeah, and I actually, let's talk a little bit about the crosslinker in that as well, and what that brings to the table. I mean, so I guess first off, how would you explain to people what the crosslinker does? Because a lot of people get confused about, I don't know, crosslinker, hardener, catalyst, 1K, 2K. How would you describe that?
You mean as far as what it does,
Yeah,
or
like how it works.
the
Yeah.
benefits of it?
Well, both. Let's start with like how it does. Like what is a crosslinker? What does it do? And then what are the benefits of adding it?
Yeah, so the crosslinker, I actually just had a gentleman reach out to me today asking about the crosslinker with the 1094. And really all the crosslinker does is it gives you, once it's dry, it gives you more chemical resistance, a little more durability. It really doesn't help anything with curing or with as far as dry times go. And I will say even the crosslinker, between the crosslinker and the catalyst, I was a little confused in the beginning as well, because they're two different animals. The one, you have a pot life. I mean, you both of them, you have a pot life, but the one, once the pot life is out, you better have it out of your gun.
Right.
The other one, you can continue using it. You just won't, like the crosslinker, you can continue using the product. You just don't get the benefits of the extra, I guess the benefits of having the extra chemical resistance or durability.
Right. And so what I would say is the 1094, when you add the crosslinker to that one, it like really helps that mar resistance. It's like almost impossible to scratch it. It may give it a little bit more chemical resistance, but not as much as the 1245. When you get into 1245, you're kind of almost like it's kind of in the realm of the solvent-based conversion varnish. That's kind of a good way to cross it over with that. But yeah, so yeah, with the crosslinker, you're looking at, I believe it's 6 hours, right? Six hours, and then you can recatalyze it like up to 4 times.
I want to say it's 4 hours and
Okay.
3 times. I may be wrong, but that's what I've been telling people.
That's fine.
I'm pretty sure it's three times that you can recatalyze it.
Okay.
But again, with the 1094, anytime you have a self-sealing product, my experience has been that if you have a self-sealing product, they can be good, but most of the time it's only for the convenience of only having one product.
Yes.
Because if you're adding things to it to make it sand easier, most of the time you're taking a little bit of durability away from it. So I would agree with you. The 1245 is going to be a superior product over the 1094, although they're both great products. 1245 is going to be better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's just application specific. What are you trying to achieve? What do your customers need? I tell that all the time. I think too many people get hung up on, I've got to have a 2K poly. Well, not necessarily. I mean, if you're shooting, furniture like I got sitting here back, you don't need a 2K poly. I mean, you can certainly put it on there, but I mean, you don't have to have it. So I want to make that point. I think it's just the human condition to want to have the best of the best. But there are, great places like, the 1094, like trim, millwork packages. I mean, that would be totally the way to go. And honestly, for guys that are out there doing that stuff dries really fast. The coverage is a lot better than what you're going to get from like your Sherwin-Williams Pro Classic. And if you can put it on heavier and it's going to hang, and you can get away with less coats from what I've seen.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
And it's kind of interesting because, really the European system is really known more for build it with a sealer, then put your top coat on. So like the 1245 system is really kind of more geared for that European style. So you're going to put 2 coats of sealer and 1 top coat. Are you finding that's what people are doing, or are we still hung up on 1 sealer, 2 top coats?
Well, I mean, honestly, I guess I don't know if I don't even remember who taught me, but I've always done 2 sealers or 2 primers and 1 top.
Okay.
But it has been a struggle. There's a lot of people using 1 primer and 2 top coats, and it's really hard to convince or to turn those over just because they feel like they want that extra top coat.
Right.
Like they're giving it more durability. When I tried to explain it, I said if you are wearing through your first layer of top coat, it's not going to be looking good anyway.
Yeah, that's a
So
good. That's an excellent point.
so what's the point in having two top coats? Because if you're wearing through the first coat, it's not going to be looking good anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I've really never thought about it like that, but that's a solid point. That is really a solid point. I think the issue that I've struggled with is because you've done it so long that way. It's a hard habit to break, and occasionally I'll find, just because I've been used to the more American coatings, is that I feel like to get the smoothness that I want, sometimes I'm not applying it heavy enough to get that one coat where I want it. And so I keep wanting to add another coat. And I don't know, real world problems.
Yeah, and even with going with two primers, the benefits of that is usually your primers dry faster, they sand a lot easier. It makes the process faster, smoother, and even the end result, I feel like most of the time it turns out nicer because you have a primer, you can flush sand it a lot easier than you can a top coat.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about the stains for a second. I got this board right here. This is your all's spray stain, and this is over Baltic birch. I talked about this last week with Brian Barosio. There's no blotching, which is absolutely amazing. And I shot this vertically, and I mean, I like laid it on and hammered. And this is it's the 1067, which is the same thing as what you all sell, the 1062. But I mean, it doesn't get any better than that to me for a spray stain, especially water based. I've never seen that before in my life. So, do you guys match stain as well? And do you have what are some of the popular colors that you're seeing? I mean, I know we're in the land of paint, but there still are, fortunately, some of us still get to do staining once in a while.
Yes, there's a lot of stain being used still. The water-based stain, I'm just going to be honest with you, we're doing some of it, but we're not completely switched over to all of that yet. We're doing quite a bit in the solvent, but I will say that Renner spray stain, that water-based spray stain, is the best spray stain I've ever seen. Several months ago when I was in Charlotte at the Renner lab, I was blown away how basically you could mess up as much as you wanted to and it still looked good.
Yeah. Yeah, so a good friend of mine, Greg Saunders from Annex, he made the joke that you could have someone shoot it over their shoulder back on a shelf and it would come out perfect.
I mean, it's pretty much foolproof.
I know.
It's amazing.
It really is. And you know what? That's good for people like me because I can mess up a soup and sandwich.
I think we can all do that.
I like idiot proof coatings. That's my kind of coating.
Yep.
And you know what? Speaking on that, it does make it a lot easier. And I really do think that of a lot of the coatings I've sprayed, the Renner is really all their stuff is very easy, user friendly to use. I mean, you can take someone that doesn't have a lot of experience and they can get superior results to stuff that you're just going to drive down to the home center and get.
Mm-hmm. I would agree. I would agree with that. And I will say, I was today, I know this is a little bit off topic here, but I was playing around with some of the Renner 2K solvent-based products. We're going to be bringing on the whole line, not just water-based, because there's still applications, there's still accounts that we have that are still using solvent and want to stick with solvent. And they have some really nice 2K acrylic urethanes. I sprayed the I think it was M073, which is an acrylic solvent-based urethane, and it turned out beautiful, like a 3 sheen, dead flat.
Nice. Yeah. So what else do they have? I mean, go ahead and speak on the solvent. I mean, there's some guys out there that watch the channel here that are, they'll email and be like, man, that water base is looking pretty good, but I'm kind of stuck on solvent. I'm like, well, Yeah, it is good, but I mean, there's still a lot of guys looking for solvent stuff. So why don't you talk about that for just a little bit?
Yeah, so we, growing up in the conversion varnish, both my boss and I both have a combined experience of over 40 years in the finishing industry, and it's all been conversion varnish, like I said earlier, conversion varnish lacquers, that kind of thing. And so when we brought Renner on board, initially it was just the water base, but then we saw the capabilities that they had because of the manufacturing that they have in Italy, Brazil, Mexico, the different areas that they have. Not only do we have the ability to have the water base, but we have the solvent base in the urethanes. But I don't know if I should even say this, but we're bringing on, I sprayed samples today and it turned out amazing, conversion varnish. The Renner conversion varnish is from Brazil.
Cool.
So we'll have the whole product line. We're working on the color system right now. To tint any color in both water and solvent.
Great. So what's the ratios on that? I'm curious to see what their ratios are on their solvent-based conversion varnishes, like with the catalyst. What are the ratios that you add to it?
So the samples I sprayed obviously are just samples. That's what we got from Brazil. I sprayed the samples today. They turned out beautiful. Those were 3%. However, we're having that adjusted because everybody likes simple and easy. So we're going to be bringing on, once we have the program and everything set in place, it looks like it'll be a 10% catalyst.
Okay. Yeah, that's more kind of de facto 10 to 11. And I always think that's interesting because I've always noticed it seems like the American manufacturers always have higher ratios than the Europeans. It's very interesting to me. A good example is the CIC stuff. Like their conversion varnish is like a 10 or 11%, and then of course you're talking about 3% there, and then on their 2K polyurethane for water base, it's a 20% instead of a 10%. So it's 4 to 1. Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. Yeah, we're actually, I'm talking with them, playing with them about bringing that ratio down, but we're not sure if it's gonna affect the chemical resistance or not. But I always do find that interesting. Now, Exalta's is less than some of the other ones, and Sherwin-Williams is somewhere, I think, 7 to 10%. It's been a while since I've shot the Sherwin-Williams stuff, but I shot some of the Exalta not too long ago on some tops. But I don't really shoot a whole lot of solvents anymore. And I'm getting away from the vinyl sealers because I'm really liking some of these water-based sealers. So I'm coming around.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about the 2K since you brought it up. What are you guys carrying Renner 2K wise?
The 851, we are bringing that in as well. I'm not sure what the timeline is on it, but we had so many requests for it because of social media.
Yeah.
Everybody's talking about it. It's like the holy grail of finishes. And so right now for what we have is the 1321, which is a mono bi-component product. It's a 2K product that you can use either by itself or you can cross-link it or catalyze it. That's what we currently have, but not sure where the 851, maybe once that comes in, I'm not sure. We might just discontinue that one. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen with that yet.
My bet would be because the great thing about the 851 is, like you said, look, it can be used by itself. You can put the crosslinker in it, or you can put the hardener in it. It's like a Swiss Army knife, and usually Swiss Army knives are you have a lot of choices, but they're not really good at anything. But really, that coating is good at all of them. And honestly, for me, I've always really looked towards for a 2-coat system in water base, and I've really never seen it, but I really feel like that's the closest that I've seen. And on a refinish, you legitimately can do 2 coats and you're done. And I've joked around, and we were joking around with Brian last week that you literally could put the 643 on and let it go if you put the catalyst in it. It's that good. Obviously you're going to have a lower sheen, but it could stand on its own. It's got so much chemical resistance, and the mar resistance is so good.
Now, I will say there are some certain applications on the 643. One job in particular I'm thinking of where one coat did not completely block the tannins. But again, it was a refinish job. What was under it, we don't know. But it did bleed through a little bit. But by putting an additional coat and then a top coat on it was fine. But it's one of the things where I never like to promise people and tell them, 2 coats, you're going to be done, because there are certain areas that it may not work. And so I guess I let that up to the refinisher when they're doing the job. If it looks really bad the first coat, you may want to, give it a second coat of primer.
Yeah. Well, and I'm glad you brought that up. Let's chat about that for a second, because that is a really good point, and that's something that in a refinish, that's sort of the gamble that you take with it. And so my suggestion has been, if you have really bad spots, you get I'm not a big fan of shellac, but you could use that as a spotter, or you could use, my preference would be vinyl sealer. You could use that as a spotter as well. But what I saw in my test was, and I did it. Now, here's the difference with my test in the real world, was mine was a door sample that had been in a designer showroom for years, and all it's getting is little fingerprints and stuff. It's not been getting like chemicals and beat up and the dog licking it and food crammed down in it. And so sometimes those situations, like you said, can be a little bit more difficult. But I did see it bleed through that first coat. But then when I put the 851 over the top of it, it was gone. But I do agree that I think you can run into situations where 2 coats is not going to do it. So I'm glad you brought that up and put that out there.
Now, with that being said, I have not had the 851 to put over top of the 643. We were using the 1321. Now, the 851 may be solving that problem. I don't know that. But in this particular case, 2 coats of primer and then 1 1321 was the way to go to complete the job. So
sure,
851 may be the answer to the problem. I'm not sure.
Well, the 851 will block as well, because I did it on the back side of the door. I did. And it's sort of the same thing. And I just wanted to see, because that can be used by itself as a self seal. But yeah, it's it's a pretty amazing coating. I mean, I'm really excited to use it on a job.
Yeah. Well, like I said, the 851, we put that order in, and I'm not sure exactly. That's coming over from Italy, so I'm not sure what the timeline is on it, but we'll see what happens, I guess. And I'm super excited because, like I said, we've just had numerous people asking for it.
Yeah. Well, while we're talking about that, and I forgot to mention it earlier, but had you find a difference with shooting the 2Ks, like on the HVLP side, like running a pressure pot? Do you feel like that helps as opposed to just running it straight out of the cup?
Definitely. I believe with the fluid delivery system, it works a little bit better because you have a little more control on your pressure versus just having the gun on the turbine. Because with either the 2-quart or the 2.5 gallon pressure pot system, you have the ability to have your pressure at 10, 15, 20, whatever you want it at. So you have a little more control on the fluid, to where you're not having to move as slow like you said before.
Yeah. So basically it's just being able to push that material out so that it can be atomized, instead of like the gun having to suck it out and then atomize it. You're getting a lot more force, which is something that last week when I was talking to Brian, he mentioned too. Now, I know also, let's talk about air-assisted airless for a minute, because I knew there's guys out there that use that, and you guys have, messed with that as well. What are you guys seeing recommendation-wise on that side? Like just a rough ballpark on, fluid pressure and tips.
Well, the one that I used when I was doing the last sample doors I used it was the Kremlin. It was the Kremlin 17-to-1 pump. It was the bigger pump. but we have the Excite gun on it. And the '09 tip was the tip that I was using. I had gone to 11 tip, but it just seemed like it was a little bit too big. Again, I was getting that raindrop effect where it was a little more of that orange peely look. So I stepped it down to a size 9 tip and up my pressure a little bit. And my pressure, I'm trying to remember where I had it. I think it was like 50 pounds on the fluid, between 40 and 50, something like that. And then in my air, I normally, what I do there is I really don't pay that much attention to the gauge. I turn the air pressure on until the little tails on both sides get pulled into the fan.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's usually in that 10 to 15 pound range.
Cool. Yeah, that's one thing we've been finding a little bit different with the Malacy. We've been having to run higher atomizations. It's a little bit more fiddly coating to work with. And I haven't got to, I think I shot a job with the 1094 with my air assisted airless. And I think I used an 11. And one thing I'll mention that I am finding out with some of these heavier viscosity coatings is if you can get the double orifice tips, that can help as well. Have you guys messed with any of those, or were they just regular? They
were just a regular tips. I have not used any of the double orifice.
Yeah. Well, some guys, I actually, I don't know if you've met Ty from Total Finishing Solutions. He's out in California, and we've had a lot of discussion about this. And a lot of guys think that they call them bubble busters, but really what they're meant to do is it agitates it and breaks it up finer. So if you're actually having bubbles, I've actually found if you take those out, it helps, and you have them in, it makes it worse. Now, I don't know where all that came from, and I could be losing my mind on that, but I have experienced that. And those are more with the American coatings where you're not running fluid pressure that high. You're like 20, 25, you're 400, fluid pressure. If you get up too high, you're going to have curtains coming down your surface. But not with the Renner stuff. So what mill thickness are you, shooting it out, like 4 to 5?
Yeah, 4 to 5 is my standard mill thickness.
Gotcha. Now, how does that differ from the solvent side that you used to shoot? About the same, or?
Yeah, it's about the same. I always, with conversion varnish, I always put it on a little heavy. I know everybody does 3 to 4 wet mills, but I always pushed it a little bit because I like that nice heavy build.
Gotcha. I almost forgot. Let's talk real quick before we end about your door, what you do with your doors on cabinet refinishes. I just totally forgot. So talk about that a little bit, because that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. So the door program we have, it's actually, we're doing doors. It's not completely up and running yet because we're wanting to get it on the website to where you can literally choose your outside profile, choose your inside profile of the style and rail, choose your panel profile, punch in your size that you're wanting. If you want it drilled for the European hinges or not, pre-paint it, what sheen you want it, what color you want it, and literally order off the website. That's our goal right now. But in the future, for right now, we're literally by email or fax or call. Actually, I've gotten quite a few orders by text. Nice. Somebody just texts me the sizes, and we can go that way. But the goal is to do it online just to make it simple for everybody. But with the door program, we are using the Renner Water Base Products, so it makes it very easy for the contractor or the cabinet refinisher on the job site to then order the same material that we used on the doors to match the cabinets to the doors.
Great. So can you order them raw, or are these all pre-finished?
Oh, you can order them any way you want them.
Okay, cool. So yeah, well, that would be, you guys are running flat lines for those, right?
Yes, we run them through a Venture Cobb reciprocating spray line.
Nice. Yeah, that's the way to do it right there.
Yep.
Now I'll go through them to get that, because I've talked to a couple of guys that I'm going to have eventually come on and talk about some of that stuff. Where did you guys get your machine from?
The machine was actually, and I forget, it's been several years since we got it, but it was a used machine, but it was barely used at all. I mean, it was practically brand new. I want to say we got it through VentureCop somehow. They had it as a used machine, but like I said, it was barely used. But it is, from what I've seen, other machines, the VentureCop probably stands head and shoulders above most of the others that I've seen.
Nice. And how many heads does it have on it?
It's got 4 spray heads.
4 heads.
Yeah.
And what's the dimension on the width on it?
It is a 52-inch machine, I believe. We do a lot of 4x8 sheets, so I know it does that. But I think the thing that kind of sets the VentureCop apart is the fact that it's got the 2 rails with the guns on it, which are apart quite a ways.
Yeah.
I don't know so much on the waterborne stuff, how that's going to affect the waterborne, but I know with like conversion varnish, precats, that kind of thing, what it did is it gave us that, the first set of guns gave you like that tack coat. And then the second gun, because it was so far apart, it gave you enough time, just a little bit of flash off time that you could really put on a nice heavy coat without having sags on the edges.
Nice.
And that's one of the reasons we really like that machine.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's awesome. I want one of those. Thanks for coming on. This was great. And so let's just real quick, how can people get in touch with you? And I think that you're running a special through the next week on a couple of products. Is that right?
Yes, that is correct. They can connect with us on our Facebook page, which is Timberlane Finishing Solutions, or on our website is www.tlfinish.com. That is our website. And the special we're running right now is if you buy a 3x4 electric sander, it can be the regular sander, or it can be the central vac hookup, or the 3x4 sanding system. You can order 2 boxes of your choice of grit, thickness of sponge for that sander for free. Plus, on top of that, it's free shipping.
Awesome. So if you're on the fence with a Surfprep sander, now's your time to go buy one from these guys. And I'll also leave links to your Facebook page and all that in the description below so that they can get it. But man, I appreciate you coming on. I've been wanting to. I know a lot of people call me and ask about you guys, like who's the distributor on the East Coast. So now you guys, you know him, and you can give him a call up, and he will get you fixed up. I'll leave all the information below. But man, thanks so much for coming on. I'm glad that everyone can meet you, and thanks for all the information and doing what you're doing. And one thing I'll say is, like, what's great about these guys is, these smaller companies and companies like Timberlane, they're going to help you out. They're not just selling you the paint and kicking you out the door if you have, questions or problems. They're finishers themselves. They can help you troubleshoot. They're going to get the job done for you. So I think that's I know a lot of people I talk to, they're always scared about, the shipping and all that stuff, and they're having to pay more money, but I think it's really worth it. And while I'm talking about that, I just wanted to mention that, you guys are doing a really great job with your packaging. They got the can lids on it. They're using heavy duty boxes, and they've got it all wrapped up really nice. So really no concern. I mean, if you do get something spills out, it's going to be, contained in here. And sometimes, just unfortunately, the 300-pound gorillas that deliver our products, they get a little carried away with forklifts and things. So, but anyway, I did want to mention that while we were on here, that you guys are doing a great job with that. So we appreciate it.
Well, awesome. Well, I want to thank you too, Eric, for having me on here. You've been a great help, and just with Renner and everything else out there, and educating people on how to do things properly. And so I want to thank you for that as well.
All right. Well, man, I'm having a great time doing it. So we're just going to keep the train rolling.
Okay. Sounds great.
All right, man. Well, we'll talk to you later, and thanks again for coming on.
Thank you.